this meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic and one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey. All right, next on the agenda is roll call. Can we get roll call, please?
Mayor Backland,
Here.
Trustee Knudsen,
Here.
Trustee Markle,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Stelfer,
Here.
Trustee Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Weber.
Okay, we have a quorum and continue. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Talk louder, Dave.
Second.
Yeah, so this goes for everybody. We have a couple of people on Zoom and one of our trustees is on Zoom. If you don't speak loudly, we can't understand you or hear what you're saying. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So any discussion on the agenda? Yes, Paige.
Well, I just, Trustee Knudsen and I were just talking that we would really like Suzanne to be able to do her presentation, which is towards the end of the agenda. So we'd like to say at 8:45, if we could do a hard stop and let Suzanne do her presentation.
Yeah.
If she needs to leave at 9. And because the planning commission meeting is set for September 6th, it'd be nice to do it at this meeting, since there will be an opportunity before that. Okay,
All right.
if that is that, okay, thank you.
Thomas?
I was wondering if we might just reschedule the meeting to a later day. This packet and agenda came out like really late. And I understand that friends not to criticize, you're working alone and I'm surprised that you got it together. Thank you for doing it. But I think just to make sure that everybody has a chance to thoroughly grok this and ask questions. Maybe we could do it tomorrow.
I can't.
24-hour notice.
No.
Can't do the notice.
Right.
Or Saturday, if we're like it.
Right.
I'm on duty on Saturday, so I very quite
Yeah, and I-
possibly will be able to examine.
Yeah, I didn't think anybody would go for it.
Yeah, Mr. Knudsen?
Well, I understand. This was a frustrating situation for a lot of us because, and I know we'll be interviewing. I'm sorry. Yeah, I've been reminded twice now to speak up. One of the things that's a real hassle with having Thursday meetings is trying to get the packet together, and it tends to be I noticed when I was a trustee and we had Tuesday meetings, the packets seemed to be more reliably produced on Fridays. And we had a deadline for Wednesday at 5 o'clock for when material comes in. So when we're interviewing our lawyers on Tuesday, when we're doing the online interviews, I suggest that we ask those lawyers if they're available for a Tuesday meeting and switch back. Because the only reason we're doing Thursdays is because of our previous lawyer, who's now no longer with us. And I like that system where if you have something for the agenda, it's got to be in by Wednesday at 5. That gives staff and everyone else time to look over and add and comment on. And then by Friday noon, the work starts on the packet. The packet's out that night. Citizens can look over the weekend when they're not working. We can look over the weekend when we're not, when we have more free time. But it is a frustration. I definitely hear that. A frustration about getting a packet and we have 24 hours to look at it. It's a big packet.
Less visions.
Yes.
I was just gonna add, if we could have, if there was a deadline set for a Tuesday meeting, could we just create another deadline for the Thursday meeting instead? And I only say that.
We're way off.
I'm sorry.
Approval of the agenda at this point. We can discuss this at a different time, but yeah, let's just go through this.
So we have a motion on the table. We have a
No, we have no motion on the table.
motion to approve the agenda.
Right, that is the motion. on the table. I'm sorry, you are correct. Yeah, Ms. Watson.
So I just had a question. Mr. Mark was talking about moving the whole meeting, not just my topic, for instance. Okay, because my topic it's just a starting point, and it's Anyway, but I want to point out on the agenda here, so everybody can correct it, because I've seen it written wrong a few times, it's I codes, municipal public hearing. The I codes, it's not a small I, it's a capital I, it's a trademark of the International Code Council. And it stands for international, and I code makes it sound like it's computer related, like an Apple product or something. So just to be clear, that's a capital I and it has to be international, so it's not computer.
Great. All right. Anything else? Or, all right, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the caveat that at 8:45, we will make sure that Ms. Watson can have the change. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And
All right, that motion passes. Next on the agenda are announcements. Ms. Smith, did you have an announcement?
I wanted to bring up to everybody the status of our administrator position. It has been noticed on this Colorado Municipal League jobs board, and is also now posted on the Colorado County City Government Managers Association, thanks to Corinne and her membership. So I just want everybody to know it's out there.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Are we advertising at the International City Managers?
Oh, so here, let me, thank you, because I knew there was some. It is $600 to do that because we are not a member. So I just want to let you know, I spoke with Bill Crank, who we all know who he is. He said, I'm not so sure that the international ad will get you a whole lot of better candidates. So that was just his thought, but it would be $600 and we could post it there. But I certainly wasn't comfortable doing it without board approval. So
Second question is, where are we?
I have started it, but it is not nearly finished.
So that's a mixed bag. We don't do an RFP for a recruiter. We should at least consider the $600 for that.
It's
Okay,
timing.
so then would somebody like to make a motion then to?
Well, I think she's not.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll get it. And let me add one more thing. When I went to the international city county managers, they have a whole list of headhunters that you can send RFPs to. But mostly I just haven't gotten back to it. I've started it and haven't finished it. So I intend to finish it so everybody can read, John to look at it first and then decide. But in the meantime, we have two good sources for the advocate now. And I've gotten two
okay, great.
applications.
Okay, all right, I have a couple of announcements if nobody else does. All right, first is there will be a River District Water Seminar in Grand Junction on September 16th at Colorado Mesa University. And if you're interested, you can go, and it would, it's really talking about the Colorado River Basin and the water that comes down and what we're going to do with that. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is we are changing how our meetings are running a little bit. And I wanted to make sure everybody understood that. On the second page of the agenda, it states specifically how the agenda items will be addressed. It will be first, there will be an introduction by either a community member, staff member, or board member. Then the trustees will discuss that. Then the board can make a motion. Then we will take community comment. No more than 3 minutes, one time. Then it comes back to the board with any amendments to the motions and a second comment from the trustees. Then the motion will be restated and voted upon. The other thing that I would like to bring up is that we are amending slightly how we as board members are going to be interacting. So no staff or board member shall speak without being first recognized by the chair. Each board member can speak twice on each agenda item during the first round of discussion and once during the second round of discussion. All comments at all times shall be addressed to the chair only and not to any other staff or board member. So interactions between board members will no longer be permitted. During the public comment periods, only comments from the public will be accepted. The board and staff will not respond or engage in any back and forth with a person addressing the board. If you pose questions as a citizen, you will be answered at a later time. Straying from the agenda item is out of order for both the public and the board. All derogatory or demeaning comments, name calling or personal attacks are out of order. If any of the infractions of the rules occur, The chair will interrupt the speaker and announce him or her as out of order. The speaker must yield. A decision by the chair can only be ruled by a board vote. And I do hope that this will result in more effective, civil, and productive meetings. I want to give a special thanks to Michelle Pattison and Chelsea Bookout for their comments, which help form these procedures. All right, moving forward again. We are, yes,
Just very quickly, for those who may not be connected with North Fork Senior Connections, the Senior Center will have, this, well, two things. The Senior Center will have the CEO from the hospital coming in for a coffee session with the community at 9:30 on Monday morning. So we're trying to encourage as many people as possible. This is the CEO of Delta Health, which used to be the community hospital. So he will be there. I think his name's Matt. Yeah. He will be there to answer questions for the community, explain where Delta Health is going, what their vision is, those types of things. So this is an opportunity for the community to be able to sit down with the CEO and actually have more voice to that. Right, again? 9:30 in the morning at the Paonia Senior, Monday. At the Paonia Senior Center.
okay,
And then.
well, she's going to have.
Okay, sure.
All right, so next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda, Mr. Mark?
I'd like to pull disbursements off as a separate item.
Okay, do we have a, sure, we don't need the, no, I think we can just pull it off. All right, so can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda with the disbursement pulled off?
I make a motion to do so.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, discussion from the board on the consent agenda without the disbursement.
I just had one question on the meeting minutes on page 22. And at the bottom of the page, there is discussion about the motions we made for our special meeting on July 20th, which I don't believe, did we have a special meeting on July 20th? Does anybody remember? I didn't think we did. So here's my question. That is exactly what the meeting minutes, they're reporting what we did. But is there any way to have a acknowledgement that we did not have that meeting?
I can do that in a parenthesis as a footnote.
Thank you.
All right, yes, Mr. Newton.
A different trustee now serves as mayor pro tem, not me.
Yes, I fixed that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, anything else? All right, all in favor of consent agenda without disbursements? Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Let's deal with disbursements right now. Can I have a motion to accept disbursements?
I'll make a motion to accept disbursements as described on pages. Someone can help me with that.
24.
29
Sorry,
versions.
20.
all right,
Say 29.
Oh,
there's,
yep, 29.
I can throw it too.
yeah, 29 to, yeah,
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept disbursements as described in the packet for this meeting, pages 29 through 34. Thank you.
okay,
I'll second that.
all right, discussion from the board.
Yeah, my questions were about the Brown Hills Engineering at the Clark plant. Invoice number 23803 on page 31, fourth item. $2,785. I was wondering what that would entail.
Was a test and verification operation of every piece of equipment that connects to the pulse gate control system, recycle control system, chemical injection system, and the PLC program. And repairs.
Awesome, thank you.
And I would like to point out, Mr. Markle, that in order to ask questions about disbursements, we don't have to pull out the consent agenda. Okay,
Right, thank you. Yeah.
all right. Anything else?
Appreciate that. The same page, item, Robert's Enterprise, we rented a 30-yard dumpster on, where that was. Festival dumpster, okay, cool. And the following item, the roof excavating, $5,886.07 at the 2 million gallon tank vault.
For a leak repair.
A leak repair?
Yes. The whole, it was the member vault, and we had to have excavation and back trucking and the equipment that we're using, we don't want.
Okay. Those my questions. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the board?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add it, direct everyone to look at page, I think it's 34. Let's see. It's not, it's 29. And I wanted to point out that on UBB internal grant disbursement summary on page 39, it's 34, I'm sorry.
What page are we on?
34. I don't know, 29 going on, sorry.
All right.
I printed stuff out from the previous packet, sorry. So I just wanted to point out that $40,912 is made up primarily of the revenue from the online auction. And that Cindy will be taking that money and putting it back into the fund that the auction item came from. Does that make sense? If it was a police vehicle, to go back and police, right, et cetera. So I just thought it would be helpful to point that out to everybody. The other thing I wanted to bring up that Cindy let me know about tonight, and Mr. Lamminger can probably add to it. But at the last meeting, there was some question about, it looked like a double payment for Mr. Lamminger's trip. And it turns out that it was a snafu in billing between credit cards, between the hotel, using town credit card, and Mr. Lamminger used his personal card. So he has reimbursed the town for $1,499.40. So I just wanted, that was a follow-up on the last meeting, and that is all I have to add to the information that we are.
Anything else from the board members? All right, Mr. Valentine? Seeing none. All
No.
right, motion and a second to accept disbursements, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, we're next up to recognition of visitors and guests. And again, welcome everyone. We are pleased to have you in attendance this evening. We welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions to address the board. Please raise your hand and wait to be called on by the mayor. Then come to the podium and state your name and the street on which you live. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function to be recognized. If you are on the phone, use *9 to raise your hand or *6 to mute and unmute. All comments should be addressed to the mayor or the chair only and be no longer than 3 minutes. You may speak once on each agenda item. It will help the board to hear and understand your comments if they are clear, concise, and respectful. Please present factual information. Personal attacks of any kind are not in order, as well as derogatory or demeaning statements about anyone speaking without being recognized by the chair or speaking on topics not related to the agenda item being discussed, except during the public comment period. Questions or comments to staff or board will not be answered during the meeting, but responded to later. Until you are called upon by the mayor, please be respectful of those around you and those who have the floor by remaining silent. Please take any side conversations out of the room. So I would like to ask Dina Ryan to come to the podium. She is the new head of Community Connections, or Senior Connections. I'm sorry, I still have that name.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dina Ryan. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to speak yet, thank you for having me tonight. So I work with Senior Connections, and Senior Connections is a nonprofit organization that is also volunteer based. And our mission is to be in service of older adults and seniors of the North Fork Valley. We provide a myriad of services ranging from assistance getting to medical appointments, to seasonal maintenance and seasonalization, to creating program and educational opportunities, and creating access to resources. And the way that we create access to resources is by building a volunteer base and getting the word out about who we are and who we collaborate with as partners. And we have quite a few partners across the North Fork Valley. Presently, we are located in Tayama. We are co-housed in the senior center here. And that being said, we're also in North Fork Valley service. So we service everyone in the region of the North Fork Valley. One of the reasons that I asked to come and speak with everyone today is A, to be able to get out the word of what it is that we're doing, to answer any questions. If you access to me and my contact information, should you have people in your lives who benefit from our services, and also to announce an upcoming volunteer fair. So because we are a volunteer-based organization, we rely on recruitment and recent past events that affected not just the region, but also the nation. Maybe getting the word out and accessing volunteers and people having access to human resources rather challenging. So we're doing a push to make sure that people know who we are and where we are and who all we serve. And in collaboration with the town of Crawford and Region 10 recently, we came to the conclusion that it would benefit not just Senior Connections, but many of the volunteer-based organizations of the Valley to host a volunteer and resource fair. The town of Crawford has offered to sponsor the first of these. Region 10 has offered to help sponsor them into the future on a recurring basis, happening 2 to 3 times a year. And I will be helping Region 10 to collaborate with each of the towns to create a space for that, and also reaching out to nonprofit organizations and volunteer-based organizations who are looking to. So we will be collaborating with many of these organizations. If you have someone that you would like to recommend or who I can get registration form to, please let me know. Again, I'm at the Senior Center. You can call that number and reach me, and you can also email us at Senior Connections. And go ahead and leave some brochures out front on the table. And with your permission, it would be okay. I'd love to come back again in the future and maybe do some updates for folks on some of the programming that we're going to be delivering. Almost all of the programming that we deliver at the Senior Center is without a fee. We're providing this programming to the community. And there are a lot of great programs that we can facilitate. And there is a multi-generational organization. And we should get the North Fork Senior Connections is to serve older adults and seniors. So thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions presently?
Any questions for Ms. Ryan? Yeah.
I can't remember if you said the date for the volunteer fair.
Thank you. It is September 29th, and it's going to be hosted by the town of Crawford at the town hall, and it's from 4:30 to 8:30. And it is we are welcoming a folk not just from town of Crawford. So this is open to all of the North Fork. So if there are organizations in your hospice that you know or Crawford, please let me know. Thank you for asking me that question. Are there any other questions?
Tell seniors if they could leave early because 8:30 it's dark.
And you know, it is a resource fair also. So one of the impetuses of this endeavor is to make sure that people know what some of the resources that have mulched up in the community are. And there are some incredible organizations that are providing essential resources. And on a daily basis, people say to me, oh, I didn't know that we had that program, or I didn't know that we had that program, or who do I talk to if I need these things? And there are answers to those questions. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your work.
Thank you, and we hope you will come back. Thank you. All right, would anyone else like to address the board on a subject that is not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the mayor's report. Unfortunately, I forgot to get my mayor's report in on time to include in the packet, so it will all be in the next packet. I would like to bring up, however, that I received a letter from the Colorado brand. This is the organization of classic cars that comes through Peonia on an annual basis. And they are asking us and notifying us of their brand opportunity. We have received Colorado brand funds in the past. Ms. Ferguson, can you remind me what those funds were for?
The Ellen Hansen Smith Center in Town Park.
Okay, so I would like the board's permission to go ahead and write a grant to the Colorado brand. It is due on October 1st. I would like to focus on some parks project that would range between $10,000 and $15,000. And so I can talk to Mr. Heiniger and the Parks Committee to see what they would recommend that we could do, and then I will bring the grant proposal to the board at the next meeting. Okay, is that all right, board? Yes, Mr. Markle.
Oh, yeah, I moved to direct the mayor to write a grant for Colorado grant or outline grant for the Colorado grant and bring it to the board for the next meeting.
Okay, got a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion from the board? Yes. Mr.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when we're looking at grants, we need to know what the in-kind matches are that are required for that grant, how much staff time it's going to take in order to administer that grant. So those are considerations we want to look at from going for the grant. So we're kind of a little bit carving, but that information.
Okay, anything else from the board? Yeah,
I was just gonna add that you and I talked briefly that the ARP grant that we did not get for some working on the trail at Apple Valley Park is already ready to go. If that's something that Corey feels like is still a priority. That I'm just letting people know there's something that could be easy to put together. But the Parks Committee also just put their priorities on as well. So it seems like really good timing. There's a lot to work from. Thank you.
Mr. Markle.
I was wondering if there were any projects that you had in mind.
It was the path that first came to mind because I had written the ARP grant for that. So, and when we were in the park, Apple Valley Park last week, Mr. Heinrich talked about that again. So I would like to check in again with the three people. If there's something that they feel would be more important to do than that, but I will be checking in and coming back.
Thanks.
All right, anything else? All right. So we have a motion to bring back proposal to the board on a Colorado grant on September 8th. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, next we're going to move on to staff reports. Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor. The written report is primarily the same report that was in the packet from the last meeting. I did make a couple of updates to it with some additional information. I also wanted to let the board know that I looked into Ms. Watson had given information at a previous meeting about the fact that the charter agreement had been reviewed but had not been adopted as a resolution by the board. I researched and confirmed that the agreement came before the board for first and second read, but was charter never published or it was never put in an ordinance version. So I have pulled that and plan to present that to the board in ordinance form at either the first or second meeting in September. And also wanted to bring to the board's attention, I've been working with Trustee Smith on the updating of the RFP for the ORC as the board had directed, primarily based on the process that was taken in the first round. Through completed that our draft RFP was completed, but in the time in the interim, I know at the Advisory Water Committee meetings and conversations that have been had with our operators that are working at the plants, such as Jeremiah Garcia and Jordan Redden, as well as conversations with CDPHE and Colorado Rural Water Association. It wasn't widely supported. And ultimately, the request from our operators who are functioning at a pretty high level was that we bring on an additional person, which has been discussed, so that they have the time that they need to be able to devote to getting their licenses. And our current ORC has agreed to remain and stay in do an extended contract to stay with the town through time period necessary for our operators to receive their licenses. Spoken with Trustee Smith as the previous head of the Advisory Water Committee, and working together on this, and both were in agreement that while we've done the effort, she's done what was directed by the board to rewrite the RFP. We don't necessarily believe that we should go forward with advertising or actually put that out for another round, but that we should remain with whom we have and update contracts and agreements and continue to move forward with the positive momentum we've been
Okay, questions for Ms. Ferguson from the board? Ms. Fargo?
Regarding that last, I guess, statement about the RFP. Personally, I feel like our team is extremely competent. The guys that we have there are doing an excellent job. I feel like they're learning on the job. I know that Benny is our official ORC, but I understand that he's not on site much of the time. So,
Once or twice.
Excuse me.
So sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
so my understanding is that he's not on site much of the time. And my concern is that there may be pieces, and I know, you know, in order to become an ORC, you have to be trained by CPHE and all that. But in the interim, while Jeremiah and Jordan are training on the job, I feel like it would be good to have somebody else there on the ground with them, just to provide a more thorough and complete training. Because in my experience, it's totally possible to sit down and learn a system, you know. But if you have someone who's run one like that in the past, it would be beneficial. It just helps you learn faster. So it's my understanding that Josh Moore has offered to help us in some capacity. And I think it might be appropriate if we don't, even if we don't go out with a full RFP, just to reach out and see if there are people who are willing to help us out in any capacity. Because I think that having more eyes on our water system can only be a good thing.
Thank you, Ms. Markle. Do you have any response to that, Ms. Ferguson?
I would agree with that. I think it's a fantastic idea. I know Mr. Moore has stated he was willing to help out, and I'd be happy to reach out to him and find out what capacity level and what level of support or monetary assignment for any that he would be asking for, and bring that back to the board.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Mr. King.
Madam Mayor, I'm not calling this Josh, the person that was helping us when we were in the thrash in the beginning, and the SG helping us out. So Josh was that person that gave her tour that they helped.
Yeah.
Give us, I'm trying to get context for both us and the public so that you know who this person is. They actually did a deep dive when we had our previous ORC leave. This is the person that was an ORC that came in and really helped clean up what was left. So I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from you? Yes, Mr. Markle.
I think this is part of the, it's gotta be the public records policy. Just a quick note, the website is townofpaonia.colorado.gov. On there, and was that updated? I saw it as .com still. I think I had one other note in that section. That was the only note.
Okay.
I'll make sure to get that correct.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Yes.
I had a couple of questions to go back. On the, mostly I wanted to bring up an issue that we did not get to talk about from a previous town administrator's report, and it was the de-annexation. It's being requested by 2 properties. And my question is, do we just follow state statute for de-annexation? And is this something that's going to go forward?
Ms. Ferguson, do you have any information on the de-annexation at this point?
The town adopted a de-annexation ordinance policy. Within the last 4 years, that outlines the process, which is in line with the state process. And I have not received more documentation, but yes, for all intents and purposes, the information I have is that both individual property owners do plan to proceed with annexation.
Okay. Your other question?
So I didn't know if we wanted to talk about the energy tech building, which is on this administrator's report. For 2 things. I don't know that the town of Paonia is in any position to buy that building. As lovely as it would be to be able to buy that building, it would solve, we could have a new town hall there. But we probably can't do that. And the other thing I want to bring up is I got a frantic email from a very informed person about that is a perfect building that a Bitcoin miner would be interested in. So I wanted to bring that to people's attention, but I was looking at our code. Right now, that is zoned, our zoning code, it's zoned as public. So in order for someone to come in with that kind of an industrial use, there would have to be a rezoning, which I would hope we would not take too lightly, because what the research I did is, the reason that building looks so good is because it's 33,000 square feet of open, pretty much open construction, and they put in banks and banks and banks of computers. And the electric substation is right across the street, so they have access to unlimited electricity. And the downside of these things is the noise. The noise of the fans that have to run in those buildings to keep those computers cool are a nightmare for the neighbors. So I'm just bringing that up so that if we start getting strong-armed by someone, we're prepared.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Yeah,
Mine is on the open records policy. So
okay,
if somebody else wants, as we should question before that.
okay. Well,
I found my second note.
oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah, I move that we make the form found on page 52 available as a fillable PDF on the town website.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion.
Second.
Okay, discussion from the board on making the form on page 52 of the packet a fillable PDF on the town website. Yes.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. This seems like a form that probably gets filled out fairly frequently since it's here in the packet. I've done several of them myself. And it might be a good way to save time and make better record keeping and transparency.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Patterson?
Christina Patterson. I have just a quick question about that RFP for the ORC. There were applicants for it.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're off topic. We're discussing, we have a motion now to make the form a fillable PDF.
So will we come back to that?
You possibly could, but at this point, we have a motion. All right. All in favor of making the form on page 52 of the packet into a fillable PDF form on the website?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right. Do we want to go back to the public records policy?
I just have 3 questions.
Okay,
The first one is on page 39. And it is highlighted that any request for open records will be transmitted to the town attorney. And I just wondered, I was curious as to what the town attorney is expected to do with that request.
okay, Ms. Ferguson?
So that actually is highlighted and needed to be tweaked because we submit them to the town attorney when it's something that requires a review or any kind of additional direction on whether or not it would be a public record. But not every public record request goes to the town attorney.
Okay, thank you. Your second question?
Second question is on page 40. And there is a reference to a fee schedule associated with the records requests. And this is just my opening to, I really think we need to start looking at our fee schedule and get it updated because I don't think our current 2019 fee schedule talks about open records requests and the costs. So I just would like to perhaps put this on a future agenda that we revisit what I think is dated 2019 fee schedule.
Okay, thank you.
And then my last question is on page 41. And it is, language is truncated under the period of providing requested documents for review may be extended up to 10. Text is missing there. I don't know what it should be. And further down on that page, there is, I think it's the timing. 3 subsection A, it asks verified by the recipient. And I just wondered if the email is being sent, should the email be only being sent to the clerk as opposed to, do we need to declare that it goes to the clerk, not just an open-ended recipient?
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ferguson, do you have an opinion on the truncated piece?
10 days.
10 days, okay,
So we'll make sure days is in there in the updated version.
okay, and then,
Verified by the recipient. I think it could be the clerk. I would just want to confirm that somewhere within the document, it does state that, and I believe it does, where it's the clerk or the person who needs to fulfill it. So, if it was a police record, of course, that's the recipient's going to be the police department, not the town clerk. I think that's why it reads that way.
All right, any other questions on the core policy? All right, then let's move forward. Anything else?
On the website, thank you.
All right, anything else from the board? Okay, now we should probably discuss this as a board because the agenda sections open for community comment do not include staff reports. Right, so yes, Mrs. Ferguson.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give clarification to the board as why that was the recommendation from NOLA and CML, and that's because staff reports are being provided to the board for board input, and because there's no back and forth conversation, it's for the board to be aware of what's going on and provide direction to staff. So I'm just providing that information as the impetus for why it was not included in an area that was open, because if the community member is not having conversation or addressing staff members, then how would they pick that up? Other than coming to the staff member during this.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
If I'm remembering right, I think a lot of our most robust discussions have been community input on some of the staff reports we've gotten and questions about that. So we really need to consider that carefully as a board, because we have set an unusual precedent here compared to other towns. In our town, we say, here's an agenda item. It's not like the community can input on every single agenda item. So that's something we need to consider as a board as far. It's a big policy and it impacts people.
Anything else? Yeah.
And I was just gonna add that was one of this part of the agenda was one of the things I thought the community should be able to comment on. And even with the new consideration that they refer to you, I just feel like if the public has a question and they refer to you, it could just be answered in the future. But we would all be aware that the public has a question about something in staff reports that I think is important.
Mr. Markle?
Regarding public participation in general, I think that it's really one of the most powerful tools that we have as a board, because I think most boards have to guess at that kind of stuff, what the community thinks on a certain motion even. And so we can gather input and information very directly. And I think I understand it's definitely a burden procedurally, and it can be emotionally confrontational at times. But if we have a good procedure, I think it is possible that we can hear people's concerns on all items and prevent any back and forth between staff and public. Because I agree, I think that's the point. That's where things get out of hand, is when people begin to have side conversations outside of this conversation.
Okay. So we have several opinions on this. Yes.
So I'd like to speak a second time.
It's your second time.
Okay, this is my last shot at it. I like the idea of public participation on staff reports, but not every single thing that comes up every time a staff member gives a report. So what I suggest is, rather than having public give us input at the beginning of staff reports, this would give them an opportunity to listen. You know, they can read the packet staff report. They can listen to the discussion between board and staff about the staff reports. And as we conclude staff reports, then we have a it covers the realm of, you know, the law enforcement, the parks, all the different staff reports that were presented to us. One of the concerns is we just go back and forth a lot. And so this would help people think more before they came up about what items really important to them to use for their inputs. That's one suggestion. Because right now, the way we have it set up, it would prevent any input from things. And that's at least a step toward that to see how it works.
So it sounds like the consensus, at least the three members of the board, is that we allow for input from the public on staff reports. Is that correct? Yes, Mr. Cooper.
Right, that's Mark.
So how about this? I move that we allow public questions at the end of the staff reports. Public questions and comments, right?
Okay,
With
do I-
that, with the understanding that those questions may not be answered.
okay. So I have a motion to have public questions and comments at the end of staff reports. Do I have a second on that?
Awesome.
Further discussion from the board? Okay. Yes. Who's what?
Okay, first of all, I'm not sure what agenda item we're discussing right now. That what we're making a motion on. Okay, so that's really a staff report. Okay, so you do have a resolution that says that the public can comment after discussion of an agenda item by the Board of Trustees is concluded, and staff reports are agenda items. So this might be a bigger discussion about how you might want to amend your resolution, because I don't think you can be amending the resolution with a simple vote. We're back to the thing that Dave Knut and Dave, what's his name? Weber got in trouble over here. You know, so I do want to say you do have a resolution, and it doesn't really align with Robert's Rules of Order very well. It doesn't say once motion has been made that public can discuss. It says after each agenda item is concluded, the discussion has been concluded. So hopefully you could study that in retrospect, and also with the staff reports. Maybe there's certain staff reports that shouldn't be addressed very thoroughly in a staff report. And for instance, the town administrator would say, I think this one is too important, board. I want to mention it to you, but I've decided to include it in the agenda as an agenda item, notice item, because I think it's too important to just put in. And so there is some responsibility, I think, to using the system that you're talking about, that you have to make sure that you're trying to be as transparent as possible as the staff too. Thanks.
Sure.
Oh, Ms. Patterson. Ms. Patterson, you're still muted.
Yes, I was. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, similar to what Ms. Watson was saying, I think that at least to me, staff reports are intended basically to be informational for the board and for the public. And if there's something where a staff member is requesting board input, or if the board thinks that you might make a motion on something, I would like to see that pulled out as a separate agenda item, which would then make it available for public comment and motions, and be very clear what the board might be taking action on. My other comment is that I agree strongly with the idea of not having back and forth discussions related to those public comments on staff reports. But I think if someone asks a question, there might be many more people who are also interested in any potential answer that comes from that. So I would like to see a formal way that any answers provided are made publicly available, whether that's included in the next packet, posted on the website, rather than only giving an answer to the one person who asked the question. Make sure everyone who might be interested will have access to that answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Anything else from the public? All right. Seeing none. This is the problem with that podium, is I cannot see. I'm trying to get it up the audience. So, oh, sorry. I thought we were going to be done with this fun stuff. So, all right. So we have a motion and a second to allow public comment on questions and comment on staff reports. All in favor, or any further discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Well, since it just passed, then let's finish up the staff report. Public Works report, Mr. Heidegger.
So. We've been trying to cover all of the source of recommendation.
Mr. Heidegger, could you speak up a little bit
Sorry.
for our Zoom people?
We've been working on trying to get all the source of recommended fixes in, or at least the plan in place to correct those. We've got quite a bit of them already completed. We did start the bridge cleanup, ran into some problems. We will need some more equipment or assistance to finish completing that. We then started weeding on sidewalks and easements. Still, we have concrete prep starting for the town park for the concrete pad. We're still continuing to work on potholes and line breaks, leaks as they show up. And we're currently building diversion box lids for the new diversion box up above the 2 million gallon tank. Stuff out of that. We will be converting more of the meters, radio reads. And we did install a stop sign, and I talked with Matt some. We will probably be converting the yield sign on Niagara to a stop sign as well. That's about. Oh, and going over some sidewalk options and also the upcoming project. That's kind of all I have for now.
Okay, questions for Mr. Heidegger from the board? Yes, Mr.
I was wondering if we could get a list of the SURSA required fixes. If we could get a list of those that have been completed and continue to need to be.
Okay, yes, would you please produce that list,
Yep.
Mr. Heidegger? Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board? All right, yeah, Mr. Houston.
I just want to thank Mr. Heininger for his attendance at the Parks Committee meetings, because when he's been there, it's been really helpful to walk the citizens through what's going on in the parks. People can see our next Parks Committee meeting will be on the 20th. Our next Parks Committee meeting will be on the 20th of September, and it'll be at the River Park at 4 o'clock. That's a Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heidegger. All right, next is police report. Mr. Lamager.
Most of the guys are certified on our tasers. They're now carrying their new issued tasers. We worked on the stop sign on the streets. We put another stop sign. We have started our traffic enforcement with the kids being back at school. We're working with the county a little bit in that. From 4th to the highway. It's not actually town of California. That's not our enforcement area. Once we on the school it is, so I reached out to them, working with them to try and resolve that issue a little bit. And we have one officer who will be attending driver instructor training next week. We'll have somebody in-house driver instructor.
Anything else? Okay, questions for Mr. Lamager from the board? Yes, Mr. Houston.
I was curious about how the crosswalk flashers got installed. I just wanted to compliment whoever did that. But it's a lot safer for the kids now trying to get to school. But how was that done? Who did it?
Yeah, so Ben Graves and I don't remember what high school student came out and actually assisted us with that as well. We supplied basically the paint and help close down the road along the painting. Couple guys out trying to help paint. Make sure everything was safe on that computer.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
And the flashers were purchased and provided by the school district.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? for Mr. Manager? All right, seeing none, let's move on to finance treasurer report.
Still working on kind of finish up the audit. Third revision. And starting the budget process, that pretty much.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Jones? Yes, Mr. Merkel?
The auditor, I was looking at the minutes, the auditor's report was originally going to be in July. Do we have a firm date for them?
Do we have a firm date now? Okay, yeah, she's currently on vacation.
The auditor?
Yeah,
She's back.
okay,
If there, she's waiting for me.
okay, all right. Yes,
The other question I had was, I was curious as to whether the third revision, if that is in-house initiated or if the auditor asked for revision.
is it in-house or is it from the auditor
Both.
combination?
Each one is a combination?
Yeah,
Each
it's a
revision was a combination. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right. Then I will open it up for questions from the public on any of the staff reports. Yes, Ms. Watson.
I suppose I could have asked this privately of Corinne, just what I'm hearing, but since there's action being taken, I feel like I have to address it to you. And maybe find out. I'd like to know what the process is for placing traffic control signs.
Okay.
When we had a four-way stop at bike shop, it was a board vote. When we reduced this, when we changed speed limit signs within town, that was a board vote. Stop sign or any of these traffic signs are laws. They're traffic laws that are enforceable in the court of law, where people can get big fines. And I just wanted to know who's responsible for creating the laws in this town. And is there something in the model traffic code about this? I just wanted to know the process because I've seen it another way before. So just for clarification before we proceed, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to our public hearing. All right, I am opening the hearing. So we are looking at ordinance 06/2022, amendment of chapter 18 of the municipal code concerning I-codes. All right, staff presentation, Ms. Ferguson.
Again, just very briefly, because I believe most people in the audience and I know the board are familiar with the process. The building official, Dan Reardon, first came on. Well, he came in with Shun's Coda, was the company he worked for, and brought before the board an agenda item to bring all of the entities that Shun's Coda represented under the same updated code, which is the 2018 version of the I-code. And the board voted to participate in that program. Over the last few years, there have been several iterations and discussions had at both the committee level when the committee existed previously and at the board and other community meeting level on different areas of needed modification updates and what attachments needed or could be excluded from the updates of the town. So that document has been completed, reviewed by multiple town attorneys and boards and has been properly noticed. All books are available online and have been ordered in hard copy as well for town hall. And the only modification made to the red line version from the last time it was in front of the board was one section where it was listed as that nothing in the international building code could be appealed, and that should have been the plumbing code to be endorsed. So that was changed. Other than that, I have no other alterations or changes happening. What's in front of you from the last time?
All right, questions for the applicant or Ms. Ferguson from the board? Mr. DeMarco.
Just procedurally, at this point, what are the remaining steps for the adoption of this as an ordinance?
I believe this is, we have the hearing and then do we have to have a presentation of it or is this, yeah?
No, after the hearing closes and board deliberates, you would then vote, and you could either adopt at that time and it would go into effect 30 days after publication, or you can adopt it and ask for a second read of just the clean version at the next meeting. It's board decision.
Thank you. That clear? All right, anything else from the board? Yeah.
I have to tell you that I had not really read this until this iteration, and I have a series of comments that I think make this very difficult to adopt at this point. There are inconsistencies. I'm very concerned about the wholesale repeal of section 11 of chapter 18, which is actually in the form of an ordinance. It's not been codified. And the whole thing was created in 2021 about the Board of Appeals. And this is proposing to completely eliminate it. And I don't feel that what is in here provides enough information about the Board of Appeals for section 11 not to stand. So I had, rather than go through page by page, which I could do in writing, I just have to tell you that I have questions on page 60, 64, 65, 66, 67, 69, 81, 79, and 75. And some of the problem is, for instance, I just want to go with page 60, which is the first page of the strike and underline. The fourth whereas talks about that all of this is referencing the 2018 edition of the IBC, IRC, et cetera. However, on page 75, Article 5, there's reference to the 2020 edition of Installation Handbook for Manufactured Homes, making that whereas incorrect. It needs to recognize that there's also being adopted by reference a publication from DOLA that's dated 2020. So, I mean, I could go through these, but I have to tell you, I can't approve this tonight based on what I reviewed and found and things that I think are inconsistent. And the main point I want to make is this should be intended for the average person to be able to read. And I have to tell you, it took me all afternoon to read this and go back and forth. And I didn't even read it cover to cover. I could never understand what is required of me based on how this is written. And one of the reasons is in many of the places where there's reference to the IRC or the IBC, it would be so helpful if, let's say, I'm just going to take you to page 64, let's look at number, just one for instance, let me go up, sorry. This only references section 109.2 is amended to read. If there was an indication as to what the title of section 109.2 was in the IBR, IBC, it would help the reader understand so much. What is it that they're being told has to be different that is being amended? As it is, I had to go into the IRC, IBC and read each of these sections to understand what is it that I'm being told is amended. So I feel like this could use a huge cleanup to make it easier for the average person. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Mr. Stetler? Or Stelter?
The code, the books, they basically suck badly. But this is what we've got. It's a tool. And unfortunately, we can't rewrite the code. And we can't rewrite the book. Otherwise, this will never be adopted. I mean, you can go into any page on any of the sections and you will find the exact same situations. That's the way they write it. And basically it's a long and thankless chore to go and figure anything out in code. But that's what it is. And when you go to get your examination to be a contractor, guess what? This is what you get. And I don't know any contractor that doesn't sweat it when you go in for your certifications. So to get it to where just anybody off the street can do it, I don't see how it'll happen.
Thank you, Mr. Stelter. Anything else? Yes, Mr. Merkel?
I apparently didn't read it as closely as trustee Smith did, because I didn't see those contradictions, but I would be interested in seeing a list of them. I think it's important that our code be consistent, even if it's inconsistently enforced. Sometimes it should make sense as it is written. So I think that do we have a motion on the table? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so we're,
Okay.
that's not.
So it's just discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if there are inconsistencies that are not addressed, it would be good to hear about them at the very least and assess the, the magnitude, how mixed up it really is. Because, I didn't go through and chart all the references. It sounds like she went through the whole thing, which is monumental. Perhaps regarding references to other parts of the code, a digital copy could have links to it. We have a digital version of this document, links to a digital version of that document. It might make it easier to parse where in it you are. But if there are contradictions in it, they need to be assessed and corrected before we make a call. And I think.
Thanks. Anything else? Okay. All right, so now we can open it up to public comment. 3 minutes per speaker. Come to the podium, as always, identify yourself. Yes.
I would like to make a motion that
No,
Suzanne.
we can't do this.
Yeah. Okay.
No, public hearing, it operates under different rules. No, we're gonna take 3 minutes and then we want. Repetitious comments will not be accepted. The previous speaker has already made your point, and they simply come forward and state to concur. No public demonstrations of any kind, applause or otherwise, will be permitted or tolerated. Yes, Ms. Watson.
First of all, I'd like to ask, how many people want to speak in this public hearing? So you can determine what time it's together, because it's kind of sadistic. You're talking about 1,000 pages of new code here, and you're getting people have taken time to look at things over only 3 minutes. I would like to ask for 5 minutes.
Would the board like to grant Ms. Watson 5 minutes?
Thank you.
All right.
So I did go through this, it's pretty massive. So I really am only going to go to the residential code, to point out some of my examples. Some of them are mirrored in other parts of the code. I want to, if you go to page 5 is where the residential code starts. Oh gosh. Okay, so I scrambled my notes already. I'm having a hard time here. Oh, right here. Okay. So you're starting off launching right away in the amendments with the deletion of chapter 33 through 43. And then you jump down to chapter 1, administration. And then there's like amendments to administration, which is all in the 100 series. And then you go to, he jumps around a lot here. You're jumping back between the fuel gas code, which is, and then you go back to the mechanical code. So there's no logical sequence of these amendments that are happening. I think the organization is really bad. I went to the Delta code because apparently we're going to be trying to use the Delta inspector. And I see that they've made similar amendments to some of the sections. One of the ones that Delta amended was foundations. And if you look at the way it's been changed in ours, there's just this hanging amendment and exceptions saying that all foundations have to be approved by an engineer. But if you go to the Delta code, they've actually referenced the foundation section of the ordinance, which is very logical. You don't have that hanging in the middle of nowhere. And I think you should look at the Delta wording because they say that it can be amended by it needs to be approved by a registered engineer. But if the building official finds the proposed design is satisfactory and complies with the intent of the provisions of the code, he can weigh in. That to me sounds reasonable. And I think if we're using Delta Inspector, we might consider some of the similar things that Delta has. I see, okay, you're adopting the energy code, you're adopting the fuel gas code, but these are also portions that are already in the residential code. They're not quite as fleshed out, but they're all there. So there's a little bit of confusion between them. Okay, you can see it's a little scrambled. I was trying to prepare it and it was just really kind of hard. I didn't have much time to do this. So one thing I was noticing in the energy efficiency part, which, you know, you have to jump through because it's not logically sequentially organized, the International Residential Code changes that he's making. But he's actually deleted section N1103.3.3. And if you go and look at that portion of the code, it's mandatory. Can the building, can you actually exempt a mandatory section of a code that you're adopting? I'm kind of wondering. So I do think there's some things that you need to look at a little bit more carefully. When Dan first was presenting this test, he was kind of in the zoning chapter a lot. He was talking about setbacks and sheds, and it really had nothing to do with the international code. I would like, as a member of the Board of Appeals, number one, I don't think the Board of Appeals ordinance that's within the code is bad. There is one in there. And I think it needs to also appear in administration. Board of Appeals shouldn't be under violations because you don't have to have a violation to appeal to the Board of Appeals.
1 minute left.
Okay, so anyway, I have things that I've written out here. I'd like you to consider them a little bit. I didn't have time to submit this beforehand, and I would urge you to take a little bit of time and try to understand some of these basic things. Another thing that Delta does is they're very clear about the electrical inspections, that the state does it. I don't see that in this code. I don't know if you've looked, but it's not clear that we use the state approved electrical inspector. Delta code cites the statute applies to. I would recommend we do that with the plumbing. And as far as fuel gas, I asked what sections we follow. I think we need to be specific if there are ones that we're not following. And then aside from that, the language amending everything is very vague. When I went to Delta, it's like amended to add, amended to delete, amended to include this sentence. And what I know, thank you. I'm not seeing that within this version. And I think this is something that's going to last for a long time. And I want to see it built on a very good foundation. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be a little bit better than I'm noticing here. Okay, thank you. And it might, a work session maybe with the new board might be added to this one.
All right. Anyone else from the public? Yes, Ms. Jackson.
Well, mine's just really short. I just think that if it's this confusing, it would be worthwhile to take the time to make it right, because how many people are gonna come up and have problems because of it? So, I mean, I don't know much about the building codes. I built in Delta County. I had to have a plumbing inspection and electrical inspection. My building's great, but that's all I needed.
Anything else from the public? Yes.
You know, 324 Orchard. I would agree that there's some review that needs to be done, similar comments to what Susan had said. I saw that the foundations requirements 24 inches deep. I know minimum 24 inches. I would never do less than 32 inches here in this area. So I was wondering why 24 inches was set in the code as the minimum footer depth. I would want to check and make sure that that's actually acceptable for this area. That was very surprising. In the revisions, there was a part that said that the inspector, that basically inspector, or rather, sorry, an inspector does not really have an opportunity to make a ruling on the code, and it's really more typical to, especially when you have odd conditions, which we have odd conditions all over the place in our existing buildings, to be able, for an inspector to be able to say, you know what, this is what the code says, but you've got an odd situation and I'm going to allow a variance to what the code is requiring. And in the revisions, that's not accounted for. It says that you can't do that. And with older buildings in our area, I think there needs to be some leeway for consideration of what the existing conditions are. I also really disagree that a foundation needs to be engineered. It's very easy to take your live loads, take your dead loads, take how many stories you have and what the slope of the roof is, and say, okay, you need two number 5 rebar in the base. It's an expense for owners to have to get something engineered every time they want to put a foundation. And many foundations can just be, looked at as within standard practice. That's fine. So I'd like to see there be some leeway for an inspector to approve a non-engineered foundation. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Patterson.
Page 7, section 8. Section R1086 is amended to read, work commencing before permit issuance. Any person who commences any work on a building structure, electrical, gas, mechanical, or plumbing system before obtaining the necessary permits shall be subject to a fee established by the building official. And I'm not sure that that is legal. Does the building official establish the fees, or does the board?
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close this hearing. All right. Discussion among trustees. Okay, Ms. Smith.
I would just like to express again that this is intended for the public to be able to read. And therefore, I'm not suggesting that the IBC, IRC, et cetera, are necessarily the problem. The problem is that the reader doesn't have enough information to understand where exactly in the IRC, what section is being discussed in here. And I think just a parenthetical that says section R108.6 refers to this would give people an awful lot of information. And again, like I said, I have a whole series of comments that I think are need to really be considered. And Citizen Patterson just brought up the very thing I wanted to say is building official can't be the fee decider. It has to be the board of trustees. Right now, the building official is set as the one to choose fees. So there's just small pieces in here like that are the antithesis of what we do in other parts of our code. So I certainly can't prove it as is tonight.
Okay, thank you. What else? Yes, Mr. Coote.
We have a lot of input tonight on things that could be corrected, but one piece of input that's not added is our plan for the future is to have the Delta building inspector and the Delta code. They will be the ones that will be inspecting here. It seems one thing that's missing is I think it's important that Delta weighs in on what we're ready to adopt and give us some suggestions before we adopt it. Because it's going to be really tough for a Delta building official to come up here and try and enforce a code, especially if there's a lot of variances between what he or she is trying to enforce down in Delta and what's happening up here. And I'd like to see no consistencies there. So what I suggest is that they be submitted to the city of Delta for any comments or revisions they have. And that the record of the public comments here be looked at as far as revisions plus what trustee Smith has suggested.
Okay,
And I really hate to put this off. This has been 3 years. I think it's 4 years since I was on the public, what was that? It was GAPS committee, way back when there were problems and we had public hearings about, and you know, it's now taken us 3 or 4 years to try and get to a point where it's more satisfactory to people for the building inspection stuff. So I will say though, that the process that my wife and I went through as far as building official, the inspection and the fees and the plan review, I felt it was fair, but that was one perspective.
thank you. Yes,
Was that a motion?
no, it's not.
It wasn't.
We're not there yet. We are not there.
We're discussion.
yet. We are in discussion only. Anything else for the board? Yes.
Yeah, I think. Agree with what Dave just said, basically, I think it makes sense to incorporate additional comments and we have time and we can get more feedback from the person who will be eventually enforcing these codes. And it's a really smart move.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Stone.
Didn't Dan Rudin go over these codes to do the amendments?
Yes, he did.
I thought that was the whole purpose of that.
And I hope he did. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Mr. Valentine?
No.
Okay. All right. So now I can come up with a motion. This is board action.
I'll make a motion that we submit this document to the city of Delta to ask any comments or revisions that their building department might want to make. And then at the next meeting, we have the comments, summary of the public comments and comments that any trustees want to make as far as revisions.
Dave,
I know it's getting long.
let's,
I'm trying to follow
let's-
trustee Smith's lead.
let's, and make it a motion that can actually be.
Let me see if I can read. I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider this at the next meeting with the input given in the public hearing from the city of Delta and from other trustees.
Okay, reconsider at the next meeting
With them,
with input from the city of Delta and
public input
amendment.
hearing and any trustee input.
Okay. Okay.
And I say grr after that, this is just taking so long. It's very easy.
Okay. You have a second on that motion.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
I,
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right. Let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is unfinished business.
I'd like to make a motion that we take a 5-minute break.
Second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5 minutes. 7:58. I am starting my. It's time for my timer. believe this is yours, Mr. Markle.
Yeah, this was born out of the frustration of people who attended the flags discussion for the streets committee. Because there was a lot of public interest in that, and we don't really have a way for people to sign up and receive notifications of town events like this. So I started looking into it, and there's actually a service through the State Internet Portal Authority. And I don't know if it's a company outside or if they're a vendor or exactly what it is, but it's called Granicus. And these guys are specifically doing town municipality communications, and it's pretty broad. They do the video recording, transcripts, stuff like that, as well as notifications of upcoming meetings or whatever events are going to be happening that are town related. And I would have liked to have sent you guys some information about their, flyers or whatnot. But the only thing that is on the SIPA website is an hour-long webinar. So if you want that link, you can watch it, but I don't know if you really want to sit through it. Long and short of it is that there are a lot of benefits to having good communication with the public about what we're doing and what we're up to. Not only is it just good governance, in general, it's transparent and fosters participation, which I think is really good. But it also allows for, if we as trustees have announcements that we would like to send to the public as individuals, it gives us a forum for doing that. It sits within state law. And it also fosters volunteerism. I think their example was, it was either like Santa Fe or San Diego or some city in California, where they, after they started their system up, because they could communicate opportunities for volunteerism, they got 19,000 volunteer hours in the first year that they set this system up, just by letting people know that they could. And I think Medina might appreciate the opportunity for people to hear about, we can use this as a forum for all kinds of things, basically as an alternative to social media. It's kind of how we used to use, communicate things like this in a kind of hit and miss fashion. And my understanding is that we completely shut down that process just because of the archiving costs. So I don't know what it costs. I don't know how to implement it at this point, but it was the best, most comprehensive answer to our problem that I could find. And if you guys want me to look into it as part of the IT ad hoc or just as an individual or however, or you want to give it to staff, I'm totally open to whatever input, but I think that it would be very beneficial for us as a community, not just as a board or a town, like everybody, to be able to have a reliable place to go where if you're interested in the trails, right, in town, that whenever there's a parks committee meeting, you know about it. And then you guys don't have to worry about notifying anybody. Corinne doesn't have to worry about notifying anybody. Basically, it's like a newsletter list. You sign up for the newsletter, have your schedule set, and it sends out the updates. So I think that whatever we do, having better communication will give us more opportunities to serve our community as a board, allow our citizens to volunteer more appropriately as they see fit, and also just improve our transparency and operations in general.
Thank you. All right, questions from Mr. Markle from the board? Comments? Yes.
Well, I'm just curious. I thought there was something on the website I thought there was something on the website that already allowed people to sign up for notifications in the town. Is that not true? So I'm wondering if that can be more robust and that's a less expensive way to get after it. If there's a way. So I'm just throwing out an alternative. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Granicus actually would be a replacement to Municipality. Granicus offers it's the same format. You put the information in and it sends out the newsletters, it sends out the emails. Just like the website part, because our website is designed and built through SIPA. It's the same. If I go and I add information, I put the notice of a parks meeting on the calendar, it generates the email letter and it goes out to whoever signed up for that. So it would be a replacement and a different format than Municode and Muni, which is what we're using now.
Anything else from the board? Yeah.
Thanks. I was wondering if, Thomas, you might share the link to that, to really understand this. And I am on Municode, but I've only signed up to get notification of meetings and meeting minutes. I am not familiar with being able to be notified of a meeting coming up on the calendar. So I don't know.
Is that a possibility on our current system, Ms. Ferguson?
Yes, I think the confusion is that you can, if you go to the town's website, on the main page, there's where you can sign up to receive notifications, news, anything that's updated on the website. You can also when you go on the other page that you click on it, shows all the agenda meetings in that grid. There's a section in there also where you can sign up. Then you're only getting notifications directly from the meeting. That's where you get multiple notifications, because every time I publish a document and then it's revised, it's into every time. Sorry. Okay. I know there are lots.
Okay. Anything else? on the board? Oh, I would be curious. Well, personally, I would like to know cost before we move forward. So, I would appreciate it if the board agrees to have Thomas do some more investigation on this and bring some more information back.
I'd like to see how well we can match it with what we have now too. Not have something that we have to assign somebody to do, and that's a concern.
Okay, thank you.
The base price, basic package is $1,000 a month.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Wow.
Where'd you find that?
So is there a way to see if we can bolster what we have in Unicode?
I'd be happy to look into that.
Okay.
They're working on some updates and upgrades and things right now, in their formatting and things. And Unicode is it's not new, but a newer platform. So I would be happy to reach out and see what updates and modifications and changes.
Okay, well, if we could get two sources of information, then we can compare them. How about that? Work with board. All right, then let's move on to the Tier 2 grant state revolving fund loans. So I did reach out to.
Excuse me, Mary, I thought public have a chance to speak after me.
Yes, I'm sorry, my apology. Would you like to speak on this Granicus and Unicode issue?
Okay, are you talking to the flag issue yet?
And for what?
Of the flag issue that Mr. Marco brought up? I didn't hear any discussion after. On the street issue.
Yeah, that was.
Issue.
No, we're not talking about the flag.
Yeah, the topic was communication about town events.
Right.
And I mentioned the flags as impetus for
Okay, so
it brought this up.
No, we are not discussing flags.
Not today.
All right, so Tier 2 grants and state revolving fund loans. I did reach out to 6 different companies, 10 companies, to get an idea of what the tanks would cost. And it did turn out, thank you, Mr. Merkel, for the impetus to do that, because it turns out the SGM quote for the $5 million was for a concrete glass line tank, which is why it was so expensive. So I was responded, 4 people responded to on this. It looks like the coated tanks are roughly the same price as the glass line. It seems, however, that we have an issue with glass line tanks. There's only one manufacturer in the United States that currently makes them, and that's the Great Plains. But I talked to him again about length of life. And it's basically until the metal rusts. You can do this. All you have to do is go back in every 20 to 30 years and retop the seams. Even that now with the advanced technologies is not that big a deal. So if we were to buy a glass line tank, it seems to me we would have a tank that would last probably all our lifetimes, that's for sure. Yes, Mr. Houston.
Sorry for being kind of confused here, but are we talking about putting a tank in addition to the one we're relining?
Yes, we are talking about that.
And I thought there was an engineering report that said it didn't make any sense to store treated water anymore.
I believe, when I talked to SGM at the very beginning of this process, and that was one of my questions to ask SGM, should we spend our money on doing raw water storage or finished water storage? And they said you should probably focus on raw water storage or finished water storage right now. We cannot get a tier 2 grant and or a steep revolving fund for raw water storage. We would have to go to a different funding mechanism to do that. So, you know, what the choices are, we can just reline the tank. That would cost us approximately, somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million to do that. Or we can at the same time do that and install a second finished water storage tank. And then in the 5 years that we have left on the new IIJA funds, then look for a federal grant, because that would have to be a federal grant to do the raw water storage at this point. But by utilizing the IIJA funds that come through the state, we skip all the hoops we have to jump to get a state grant that we would have to do with a federal grant.
What I'm not hearing is why we need to buy 2 full 2 million gallon tanks.
And we don't have to, it was just an option. It's just, we need to figure out if we're going to apply for this funding, we need to know how much funding we're going to apply for. And again, talking to DOLA and CDPHE, they say if you're going to apply for a SRF loan, don't apply for a small amount. Make it a larger amount.
Reading.
Yes, Mr. Stelter.
Reading the in the packet, we're looking at raising the rates substantially to do this. And my suggestion, if we're going to go ahead and do this, that we change the rates structure such that bigger water users pay a bigger price more. We just don't have one flat fee for everybody, because we're talking about what, $3.50 or $4 more?
No, actually, the revised figures that I came up with are more like $2.38 per user per month, and that's just so that's, yeah.
And that's with the 2 million gallon reline, is that correct?
That's the reline and
2 million gallon.
another tank. If we just do the reline, it's like 37 cents a user per month.
One of the things is that we relined that last tank, we relined it when I was on the council before, and I think that was in 2004. And basically it's lasted this long. And we relined it with wax food grade product. And it was what we could afford at the time. I think we paid something like $200,000. It's gone up substantially because we're talking about epoxy. Now, epoxy is supposed to last us forever.
No, it will not. It will last us maybe 25, 30 years. But the food grade, and yeah, Jeremiah did some investigating on the food grade stuff, and it will be 800.
800.
That's 800, right. So it won't be.
Yeah, I
So-
thought it was significantly more expensive.
Right. So, so what I'm looking for is which direction would the board like to go? And can we start applying for this grant? Because if we want to get this done, actually to get through this grant and the loan process, it's going to take us into 2024 to actually do construction on this. And the longer we wait, the longer it's going to take. Yes, Mr. Mark.
My thinking is a glass line tank would be an alternative to relining. So rather than having $2 million projects, we have one $2.2 million project, say. And I'm trying to remember where I might have read our throughput. I was just trying to do some quick math on it. I'm not gonna fake it, but as I recall, we only get a couple more days for 2 million gallons. That's not, you know,
It's not,
yeah, the percentage of our annual use that we can store at any one time is very small. So even doubling that is not going to make a significant impact on our water, you know, our capacity or use flows. So I'm in favor of looking at replacement versus relining. I feel like relining is something that's more I want to say short-sighted, right? Something that's more temporary. And if we have the funds for it, which is sort of the crux of the question here, is like what funds are we going to try to collect? Then it makes sense, I think, to make a longer-term solution. I am totally against raising our water rates for to subsidize this project. I feel like large capital projects like this, I know that we're going to have some stake in it, but our water rates have been raised every year at every opportunity by previous boards, and we don't have a change in services to show for it. In fact, the services we thought we had, we weren't getting. So I feel like we don't have any moral or ethical standing to raise prices on our users at this point. I do think that a rate restructuring would be a good way to do it. We got that from it was RCAC, you know, came up and they had their spreadsheet, and we had so many different rate categories that he couldn't even use our rate structure. So I think that that's a good indicator that we should revise how we're doing it. And it's something that I've talked about for years and years, of course, because we front load our costs. We have a very, very high base rate and negligible, well, not negligible, but a kind of this crazy scheme of how the price changes beyond that, which ends up being tens of dollars versus the base rate is 40 now, I think, for average, something like that. So as a percentage, the amount of water that somebody uses really doesn't affect their bill that much. And the effect is that people use more water. So we can restructure our pricing to reduce that upfront cost and charge heavy users more. And that should have the effect of revising our water. This is something that we've talked about.
Yeah, we're getting off the topic here. We need to talk about the
funding. I'm talking about funding our I forget the right term, our buy-in to the loan.
The 38 cents
Right.
per customer.
Yeah, and that math is also incorrect. The calculation on the interest is this is a simple multiplication rather than compounded interest.
And I don't know that it's compounded interest. Corinne, you have any idea whether the SR1 is compounded interest or it's simple interest?
I believe it's simple, but I would want to get.
But we are currently paying off.
Right, yeah, that's wild. But okay, I mean, the difference is like 50 cents instead of 38 cents, but I just want to make sure that we're working with good numbers. But yeah, it's based on my thoughts on this. Replace the tank rather than addition, revise our rates rather than raise them, and how we do want to go.
Okay.
I hadn't even thought about, I like the idea of let's sell the 2 million gallon tank we have now after we put in the new 2 million gallon tank. I'm saying
Oh,
I'd
so
like
do
to
the replacement.
replace it because it's 2.75 million. I'm looking at this right, to fix our existing 2 million. And if we can buy a brand new one for $2 million, we could save 750,000, have a new tank and then sell the old one. Scrap it or sell it. And then here's my other, one last part. So there was talk, Jeremiah has been saying that he thinks the 1 million gallon tank is not in good shape. It's the roof. Can we put that into the cost of a loan, is get the roof fixed on the 1 million? And then, so that I would say, forget the relining, get a new tank. But here's the question, is there room above the 2 million gallon plant to put a second tank up reasonably?
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, I've looked at the plats for all of this, and there is room. There are actually 4 different places where you can put the tank. The problem is, we would have to, it's all on private property. And so we would have to negotiate with different property owners. I also spoke to Neil Schwederman about this because he was the mayor at the time they were doing all of this. And he said that our attorney, Mr. Briscoe, was on the water board of Lone Cabin Creek. And so he informally came up with the agreement that allowed us to put the 2 million gallon tank where it is. And he was negotiating with them for these other parcels as well. So, you know, it's more steps than just put up another tank, calling it on our property. We would have to do some soil remediation. We would have to do that type of stuff.
Can I jump in here?
Mr. Valentine?
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's lower my hand. I was just going to elaborate on the use of the 3 million gallon or the 2 million gallon tank for the number of days that it'll supply water. It's it uses about, if I remember correctly, something around maximum throughput is around 490,000 gallons a day. But it's a dynamic system, not a static system. There's always some water coming in. And if you were to, for example, for argument's sake, declare a water emergency and get the use down to, again, for argument's sake, 100,000 gallons a day, people still have water, but, you know, we're not going to water lawns and all that. And you have 50,000 gallons coming in, then if you do the math on that, it's actually going to supply the town for about 20 days or so, possibly even longer. So my point here is that the utility of the tanks is probably more than it would appear just by looking at a static flow through. And two tanks in my case, in my scenario, would probably last about 40 days, which would probably carry us through some most of the anticipated dry spells. So it's something to think about. It's a technical point I'm making, but you know, I think it does perhaps change that discussion a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Okay, anything else from the board? Would someone like to make a motion? What I would like is, I would like to begin the process of an SRF loan. I don't know what solid figures we need at this point in time. We can do a ballpark figure. I think as we go through the process, then we have to refine our figures down more. But if we were to go ahead and think about doing, say, a $3 million loan. That would then, well, a combination of a $3 million loan and a $750,000 DOLA grant and a $225,000 SRF loan. That would give us probably sufficient money to go ahead and repair the roof on the 1 million gallon tank, because that's the issue right now. The tank itself is in good shape. It's just the roof that has issues. And so we could fix that. And it would give us a glass line tank replacement up at the 2 million gallon tank.
Replace.
Yeah, replace the 2 million gallon, not worry about putting in a second tank at this point. And then maybe in the next couple of years, look at a federal grant toward the well water storage. Yes.
Just a question, regardless of which way we go, or do you want to continue with going with that planning grant? Do you think
No,
we
I
should go
think-
for that anyway?
I don't know if we're not gonna replace, if we're not going to put in another tank, I don't know that we need a planning grant. But, you know, the board could give us permission to look at that and see if it would be worth it and then to go ahead and do it. Being that it would cost the town $2,000 for a $10,000 tank.
This is.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question? So this sounds off topic, but it's not. My question is, we were going to do a RFP for engineering services. That we would hire a firm to help us. Do we know if we have that firm in place that could provide us the kind of assistance this planning grant might get us the same kind of information?
Maybe we have, so we have, back in the board, we considered this the first time, we have a preliminary engineering report already. We have a soils report already. There's a lot of information we currently have. I think, you know, we would need some updating done on it for sure, but they wouldn't have to start from scratch with all the work that's already been previously done. And if we hire an engineering firm, they might be able to do that for us without having a planning grant.
And can I just follow up? So this is kind of a question for Corinne, but I didn't know if that RFP has gone out to try to get engineering proposals from engineering firms.
Yeah,
Okay, it's out and you're waiting.
It's been direct solicited to 6 different engineering firms and was also updated on the website. And I was requested today some information on some other places to advertise.
Great, thank you.
So we made it back.
Okay. So what would the board like to do? I think October 1st is our deadline for SRF, so we need to get going on this.
I'd like to make a motion that we replace the 2 million gallon tank. And that we fix the roof on the 1 million gallon tank. And possibly try to get into that pipeline from the 2 million to the 1 million gallon tank. That way we have possibility of some flexibility.
So what do you mean by get into that pipeline?
We need a pipeline directly from the 2 million gallon tank for treated water to the 1 million gallon tank, not raw water.
Right,
just
okay.
Produced water.
So replace 2 million gallon.
Right.
Fix the roof on the 1 million gallon and then connect those tanks
Right.
for potable water.
Right.
And well, and to utilize DOLA and SRF funds in this process.
That's good.
Okay. All right, okay, the motion is to replace the 2 million gallon tank, fix the roof on the 1 million gallon tank, connect the 2 tanks. Connect the 2 tanks for potable water with SRF and DOLA funds. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Any other discussion from the board? Okay.
I just want to say, I like this idea, and it's funny that we haven't talked about just canning the 2 million gallon tank. Essentially, I don't remember having that conversation, but I think it makes so much sense, what Thomas just brought up tonight.
But he brought it up.
Oh, okay, I missed it before, but I like that approach, because for one thing, to deal with lead paint on a water tank is just insane to me. So I like the idea of just replacing it.
There's something fun to add, Thomas?
I'm wondering how far along in this process we can get before we have to have very firm plans.
I think, I truly don't know. I think we do our preliminary, what we do is the preliminary meeting with the SRF. It says, this is where we're gonna go wrong, here's our approximate figures, and then we can firm that at this time. Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're not committing too deeply at this point. I mean, I know like
Well, we
it's
can
nothing
do
at this point, but like as we move forward, I want to make sure that if for whatever reason we decide, well, no, that's a bad idea, you know, Jeremiah, we need to solicit his input for sure. But like, I'm with you for now.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Anything from the public? All right, Christine?
Christine Patterson. I think according to Jeremiah, there is that connection from the 2 million to the 1 million.
It may.
That's what he told us. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ms. White.
I like the motion because it deals with things that we've already talked about. We're not getting into new and unknown territory. And as far as price increases, there's always going to be that unexpected stuff, the water transmission lines like we've talked about. And then another thing is that pipeline between the tanks, isn't it? Perhaps there's just water transmission lines bringing raw water that are leaking right now. There's a lot of maintenance that you need to be looking at. So I'm sure you can find any number of pipeline projects for.
Ms. Watson, that is the understatement of this century. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Well, anything else from the board? No, we have a motion and a second to replace the 2 million gallon tank, fix the roof on the 1 million gallon tank, connect the 2 tanks with potable water line with SRF and go with grant funds. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Move forward to get a preliminary meeting with the SRF funds. All right. Next up is scheduling a work session regarding updates to resolution 2017-06. And we might as well throw 27 there as well. As long as we're doing it. So, and then the other question is, do we want a moderator to help us through the discussion? So first off, what is availability for people to do a work session? We have every Thursday now. Next month is tied up with budget meetings on the Thursdays. At this point, I think those would be only, well, then we have lawyer interviews next Tuesday. People have desire here.
I'm booked up on every Thursday,
Yeah,
and then I am also booked up on 29th, the 20th, and the 26th.
okay. So that leaves the 30th, the 31st, and then moving into September. Looks like the first week of September.
That was here Friday.
And we have a board meeting on Thursday, so maybe not. And I'm leaving on September 9th or.
About the 5th, 6th, or 7th.
Yeah. Well, the
Maybe
5th
not
is
Labor
Labor
Day,
Day.
sorry, not Labor Day.
We have a planning commission meeting on the 6th.
This week, following week,
Next week is,
the next week in September, sorry.
well, I won't be here.
Okay. Well, what about, is Wednesday the 7th just jamming too much in?
There's 2 meetings that,
Times of planning commission meeting?
oh, that's on Tuesday at 4.
Right, at 4.
There's 3 meetings.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Friday,
That's what I was just thinking. What about
I'll bring the beer, just be.
Friday, the 2nd?
Oh. Second. I'm not going anywhere, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
Make that work.
Steve?
When are we talking about? Okay,
4?
4 o'clock on Friday.
Maybe I have-
John, can you do a work session on Friday, the 2nd at 4?
Oh, probably.
Okay. 9 to 4 p.m. Okay, so we'll do that and then
Four.
moderate.
Well, I can save us a lot of time because we have 2 rules up here, and as long as we follow that, we don't need a bunch of other stuff.
So do we want to have a moderator or do we not? Because Donna Littlefield has opportunity, of course.
It'd be good to have Donna lead us.
Yeah, I met her the other day.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, we'll have, get Donna if she's available.
If she's-
I'll let you know if she's done. All right,
Get it on second.
yeah, 4 p.m. on the 2nd of September. Okay,
That we bought.
I know that makes me very
Retired.
all right. No, you're quote unquote tired. All right, Ms. Watson, you are up.
Oh, we did. We did that. Oh,
Yeah. Everything's square. Okay, figure out what this paper. This podium is an issue. It's
Just like plexiglass.
place off to the side. Yes, sir.
Work session.
Yeah, town hall.
Okay. That's the agenda. Just to get the ball rolling, with these ordinances that were moved out of the zoning code, when I was on the board and into the building code. And, I think over the past few years, we've seen some issues with, they don't always make sense in the building now. And I think Lucy Hunter was pointing to something when actually all those building ordinances were going to her and she couldn't understand why site plan reviews, it didn't sound right. And it wasn't right for the building code because they were written as zoning laws. But so what I would like to ask you to do is just to start the ball rolling by sending this through the proper channels, which would be to the planning commission to review these things. When you put any ordinance back, even if you're just putting it back into chapter 16, you have to go through the same process, which is noticing, public noticing in the newspaper and having a hearing. So there's going to be ultimately much more board discussion on this, but it all starts with the planning commission reviewing these ordinances. What I'd like to point to is this LDR that we currently are using. I think it was passed in 2002. I think Rick Stelter might have been on the board at that time. And you'll see in our code under the purpose of the zoning ordinances that we have. And that's a whole nother issue. I think they're kind of misnamed as zoning ordinances. Zoning occurs within land use ordinances, but I think it's a little confusing. That's something the planning commission might look at too. But it said this chapter shall be based on the comprehensive plan of the town. And it's intended to alleviate congestion in the streets, to secure safety from fire, panic, flood waters, and other dangers, to promote health and general welfare, to provide adequate light and air, to prevent the overcrowding of land, avoid undue concentration of population. So these were, et cetera, but these are all rules that dealt with how people could use their property, basically. So some of the ordinances that got shifted over, I think even though I think manufactured housing installation should be looked at, it started with Article 6, which was signs. It's business signs they're talking about. Then there was flood damage prevention, which was floodplain regulation. That's a land use thing. The building code does address construction and floods, but that's in those international codes that you're getting ready to adopt. But there's an actual physical component of how things must be placed on property that have to do with regulating people's private property use. And that's why they need to go on this in the chapter 16, because there's due process that's afforded there. There's a lot more opportunity for property owners and the public to speak out before these laws are created. And that's why it's so important to have them there. It's because there's a lot more contemplation and comment that has to happen. So Article 6 is, I think, what actually got bounced over, 6 through Article 10. Article 8, for instance, was supplementary regulations which had to do with solar access protection. These are land use things. This is what your neighbor might do that affects your property, land use. So I just urge you to make a simple motion to put these back in front of the planning commission for review, and I'd be happy to try to explain it a little bit more. I also wish there was some way that we could get Dole or some of the state officials to explain land use a little bit to the planning commission, and also maybe the zoning board of adjustment, because it's always a continual educational process when you get on these boards. So I'll just end it there. I didn't drag it out too long, I hope, but if you have any questions for me. Yeah.
Questions for Ms. Watson from the board?
So you're suggesting.
Okay, Mr. Stelter.
The suggestion is that we move Article 6 and 10 back into
6 through
10. Okay.
Yes, but you can't do it with a simple vote. You have
No.
to send them to the planning commission.
But the idea is to send it to the planning commission.
Yes.
But that is the
Yes,
concept.
it's restoring what used to be in that zoning code. And I think it's also an important part for your new comprehensive plan to make sure that's all been kind of restored. I do want to say, I think maybe one of the reasons they were changed over at the time under the oversight of our attorney was because he was looking at Ridgway's code and their home rule, and it's organized much differently than ours. Home rule cities have very different organization than a statutory town. And I think that was one of the issues why it seemed logical to the attorney at the time. So yeah, we need to be modeling ourselves. If we want to look for examples, we have to find good examples in statutory towns.
Other questions? Yes.
And I'll ask Suzanne to agree with this or not, but it seems like a point to start is the ordinance that moved all these sections, 2017-11.
Yes. Okay.
Might be, I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a good place to start to unwind this.
To identify the ordinance.
And would you agree that that might be the best place to see,
Yeah,
to start?
that definitely would be good as background information. I think if you go to the code sections in chapter 18, which is the building code, you can kind of clearly see where they start, because it was all the codes that were adopted. That little subsection 2017-11 was the ordinance that counts there. Yeah, and I think I haven't looked at that manufactured housing ordinance very closely, but I only glanced at it, and I'm kind of wondering if it belongs in land use as well. We were adopting a manufactured housing code with a building code. I'm not quite sure what that manufactured housing installation actually pertains to. And I don't know what the statute says about that, but that's another thing is you really don't have authority as a board to make simple ordinances controlling people's use of their private property. That's only granted through state statute, through the land use ordinances under the planning commission. That's a very important job of the planning commission and it's the zoning board of adjustment. And that's where the your authority comes from. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Creaky.
No, I think it's time to make a motion.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
Well, I have a question. Can I? So when I was investigating illegal motions, it turns out you can rescind any ordinance that was previously written. Would it be best just to rescind that ordinance?
I don't know. Now that's a question for an attorney. The reason why I'm wondering, it would seem very logical and simple, but I don't know if it's a change to the land use regulations, and that's a different process because you need that public hearing. thing to happen. And if none of that ordinances had changed, that's fine, but the fence ordinance was in there. And I think, you know, a town can easily control boundary fences, but the minute they start telling people what they can do inside their private property, then it becomes a land use issue. So there were changes that were made to the fence ordinance. I don't think they were that significant, but that's the only one you'd have to look at carefully. But that's a good question, Mary, and I don't know. I couldn't advise you on that one, but yeah.
Marco?
Yeah, just so I'm clear on the claim here is that chapter 18, building regulations should not have items such as sign usage, flood damage prevention, supplementary regulations, et cetera, because that is more appropriately in chapter 16 zoning, which is determined by land use rules. Thank you.
Mr. Knutson?
Well, first of all, I would recommend we don't take any shortcuts. Citizen wants it.
Sending it to the planning commission makes sense too, because we could try to rescind it, but I think I think that's kind of on thin, you'd be on thin ice, so going through the process, it would be very educational too for the planning commission.
So I'd like to make a motion, this item be referred to the planning commission on the September 6th meeting.
Okay, second. All right, further discussion from the board? Seeing none.
What time is the?
I believe it's 4 o'clock. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right. We have a motion and a second that this be referred to the planning commission on their September 4th meeting. All in favor? I'm sorry, September 6th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, we are down to, thank you, Ms. Watson. You have been for 8 years. You have been talking about. Okay, let's do committee reports, finance, Weber and Smith.
Oh, let's see, finance. There's nothing really particularly new to report.
Okay.
We've been meeting with Cindy and going through disbursements, et cetera, and talking about the budget.
Okay. Parks. And still.
Okay, we had a meeting in Apple Valley. There's a short recap of that for everyone, so I won't. But basically, what came out of Apple Valley was really 2 important priorities. One was getting the restaurants and making sure those restaurants are actually used in the business. So that was a huge priority. The second one, we had a lot of people there. They said that they'd really like to see trails clearly signed, and they'd like to see those trails improved so that they can be used year round instead of a mud fest on the corner of the tennis court. So it was the restrooms and the trails were our number 1 and number 2 thing. We looked at a number of other things while we were there. It was interesting to hear the people that were those frisbee golf people say that forget about a frisbee golf course here. This is just a practice course. It's not a real course. So just leave it the way it is. There is some discussion about actually doing something with volleyball, because there's a big gravel thing there, and we could have a really nice volleyball court. There's no volleyball anywhere in town right now. You know, it's a fun game. So that's it. Our next meeting will be in the river park. That doesn't have so much to do with the town, because the conservation center is in county, but there's some in-kind things the town might provide in helping that park improve. And so the conservation center, I will possibly be out of town then, but our public works director and conservation center and anyone else.
All right, streets, now we try to work.
We have not met the flag policy updated. I will be incorporating the board comments from our last board meeting and providing to Corinne to forward to our next town attorney. Beyond that, we have no plans.
Okay. Water, sewer, trash.
Yeah, same, haven't met no news. Dave's out of town and did have a sit down yesterday with Kayla, who's the new advisory water committee member. She scheduled her own meeting, advisory water committee meeting yesterday, which is actually scheduled for next week, Wednesday. But get the opportunity to sit down and talk with her, bring her up to speed on what some of the projects have been going on since March was her last update. So sat down with her for a while.
Okay, great. Personnel.
And I'll speak, like John and I met with Cindy, gosh, on Tuesday and talked a bit about personnel and the CML survey spreadsheet that the trustees were provided August 4th. We talked about that a little bit, how that was created. So I think that might be good to, when we get to the personnel portion of the our budget discussion, I think that'd be good for Cindy to explain that like she did with us. Other than that, we just talked in general, and in the process, I think it helped refine the spreadsheets that were included in this first budget session. So that's it.
Okay. Public safety. And filter again.
Should say flow charts.
We met and I missed the meeting. I was out of town. So John,
Well, basically,
that was
we've
Lexington.
done a little bit of work with the budget. We've been talking about Lexington quite a while, and I'm glad it's on the agenda and actually being discussed, because this is something that's really important. And we've been, since we started meeting as our committee, we've been talking about Lexington. But the other thing that's really important that we've talked about a lot is these salaries of police officers, that they're the lowest paid police officers in the county, in the highest cost of living place, and that's a recipe for disaster. So something needs to be done about that, and we shouldn't wait till January 1 and lose 2 or 3 more officers in the meantime.
And my point is that we pay so little. A lot of the time, our crews for the town, our staff is carrying the town budget on their backs, and that we need to look at that.
Okay. Tree board, Mr. Valentine.
Yes, we do. Underscoring Rick's comments.
Do a tree board anything to report?
Nothing new. No.
Okay.
Mary?
Yes.
John, do we have, when is the next meeting for the tree board?
I believe it's the 15th of September. I know it's right before Mountain Harvest.
Okay. Would you email me that date and time, please?
Gladly, sure.
Okay, advisory water committee, and it shouldn't be you anymore, is it?
Right.
Oh, it's what? Okay.
But if it's okay, I'll just give you what I know as the outgoing chair. When we organized the meetings, I had asked that they be the last Wednesday of every month. And so that's why we have 5 Wednesdays in this month. So I think that's why Kaylee's confused. It is an extra heavy Wednesday month, but yeah, thanks. So the next meeting is on the 31st. And I will put together meeting minutes from the previous meeting and share those with Thomas and Dave Weber and the other members of the committee, including Bill Bruner. I do not know if he plans to attend as one of the in-town users, but I will include him on that email. And then we'll see what happens on the 31st. So, and then I will step aside.
Okay, great. Ad hoc committee, Thomas, anything on the IT?
Nothing to speak of. We haven't met. John's been focused on his other committees.
Okay. All right.
I can't
So,
blame him.
last but not least is how did we do? Yes, Mr. Moore.
I think he did really good.
I think you tell us.
Good job.
Well, I think it kind of fell apart there toward the end where we started doing some cross talking with, but yeah.
I think the direction from an 8-year-old has been really helpful.
Yes.
I said the direction we got from an 8-year-old at our last meeting, which were these 2 rules. They say, be nice and be fair.
I thought it was be kind. Be nice and be kind.
No, it was fair. Fair was.
Okay, all right. I am correct.
But we can be nice and we can be kind.
And fair. All right. All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very
It's a new record.
Yeah, we got to hear my gosh.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you for attending our meetings. Would you introduce yourself?
I would love to. So my name is Frank Kowalski, and I actually still live in Grand Junction right now. But yeah, I was hired about 2 months ago as a full-time writer, for about just short, not something meeting time here. But I did freelance for the Daily Sentinel for about a year before this, and then full-time journalist, and basically in full service. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming to the meetings. It's really nice to have a reporter back.
They've all watched.
I hate doing YouTube, but there is Hopkins and Paonia at the same night. So sometimes I will be able to be here, but when I can, I will be here.
Understood.
Thank you.